And we are live. Welcome to the Tripod, where we break down the NRL every week, every game from a punting perspective. And this is the live round 2 rapid reaction. We're here to recap the 8 games we've just seen, including a classic, a really exciting Sunday night game where everything was on the line for us that we're going to actually tackle straight away, because the game that just ended in Broncos defeating the Bulldogs 16-10, decided literally only in the final moments, swung our whole round. We went 2-1 on best bets, with our best bet being in the Broncos game, laying 1.5 points. They won the game by 6. We won the mixed matchup only just by the skin of our teeth. Again, we needed Manly to score more points than the Bulldogs. It did not look good on Friday night. We'll get to that game. That was our one losing best bet. We will unpack what happened in that Manly Roosters game. But 12 points, it's been historically low scoring, which we will talk about, as well as there's a massive, betting context for all the scoring. And we'll get a check-in with our sponsor as well about how the bookies have handled this historically low scoring through the first 16 games, where 15 have gone unders. So as I said, that gave us hope. We were an underdog coming into today that we would win the mixed matchup. Bulldogs had to be held under 12. They finished on 10 points. So the mixed matchup, 70% in 2021, 100% in 2022. Matthias, the Padonis, how are you enjoying being part of the Tripod full time so far?
Hey, buddy, it's been pretty great. Definitely exhilarating, adrenaline, whatever you want to call it. In that game, I'm still trying to catch my breath from that ending. It was
let me set it up. I'm a what's the word? Pessimist. I mean, I never want to jinx a play, but I'm always thinking, how can we lose? How can this lose? And I'll talk about like the ending of the New Zealand Warriors Titans first half as well, because I'm always thinking worst case scenario. So I'm just thinking, oh my goodness, like it's one play to go, but they had the overlap, Addo-Carr streaking down the sideline, and then when a kick goes infield, like that can end up in anybody's hands. So I thought we were done for. I mean, had the Bulldogs scored there, it's obviously like, it might come down to a conversion by Matt Burton, but it's going to sink the mixed matchup regardless. Maybe you get to golden point, then you're laying 1.5. You hate to be laying points in golden point where the team start kicking field goals. So I was thinking nightmare scenario. Brisbane holds on, very brave. We will actually talk about that game straight away. So why don't I just put up the score now, just so people can see which game. Oh, we're already stuffed up. And this is the beauty of live podcasting. But let's bring up this one here. Okay, you guys can see the game we're talking about. So we're going to talk about the game that just ended 15 minutes ago, and then we'll rewind and go through the round. So it was Brisbane 16 beating the Bulldogs 10. And as I said, our best bet was Brisbane -1.5. And I will start with you, Padonis. What did you take away from this game, apart from the fact that it was an absolute thriller?
It was a little bit too close to call than I would have liked heading into today. We had the mixed matchup riding on it as well, and we had obviously the -1.5 on our best bet on Dabble there. But I thought it was pretty brave effort from the Broncos. And you talked just now about the Addo-Carr streaking down the sideline. But what about just a minute before that? Brent Naden, almost a certain try with Adam Reynolds with a cover tackle to really stamp his authority as one of the signings of the season so far. So I thought it was a great game. I thought the Dogs were pretty impressive in the first half. They sort of, and you could really tell, and we sort of called for this during the week, just to be careful betting against the home team, because they sort of came out with a lot of energy and intensity, and they sort of controlled the middle of the ruck there. And I thought the Broncos did well to hold on in that first half, and they took their chances when they got them, that's for sure. There's a couple of crazy momentum swings in that game, like you talk about the Harvey Farnworth strip. Payne Haas did great to sort of drop off that when he got a call, and then he went down the field, scored the try, and then Adam Reynolds playing in the NFL, and then Katoni Staggs should have scored one of the most botched tries that I've ever seen. And then I thought to myself, oh no, here we go again. It's going to come down to the wire. And of course, Brisbane sort of somehow find a way to score against the run of play. You'd say, because we'd like to think, even though we've bet on a team, we sort of try to be a bit subjective, and we don't like to go all in on our play. We call it how we see it. I did think that the Dogs were pretty unlucky in the end, but I thought the Broncos really showed a different side to them this season. There's a resilience and there's like a different energy to that team this year. And in the years past, they sort of concede 30 or 40 in a game like that.
I agree with everything you said, and there were so many big moments in that game. But just quickly, when you say against the run of play the Broncos scored. So the winning try, when it was 10-all, Broncos scored off a scrum, Herbie Farnworth, again, down the sideline. Now, I thought that easily could have been called obstruction because there was contact to the outside shoulder of the Bulldogs defender. So I wasn't even celebrating. I was like, oh, no, here we go. Like, it was too easy. You know those tries where it's too easy and the defence almost gives up? So I thought that if, we want to talk about, good calls, bad calls, good luck, bad luck. I mean, how Stags dropped that ball. Nobody's going to believe me, but I've been watching the footy the last couple of weeks and thinking sometimes the winger is asleep when the ball gets played near the sideline. Like, they're not thinking that the dummy half is ever going to go to his outside. And if you threw a no-look pass or a tunnel ball, and I was honestly thinking about how we used to throw like a tunnel ball pass in touch footy and how come no one does it. I know no one believed me that. I actually was literally thinking of this like a few days ago, and then Reynolds did it. Well, what a waste, because it would have been the best highlight. In the end, Brisbane didn't miss it. There was a comment there by Adrian, the Woj bomb, about how Reynolds was getting smashed on his kicks. Like, there were some very borderline late hits. Like, in the first half, TPJ put a late hit on Reynolds, and then they put him on report 2 minutes later, but they didn't actually award the penalty because they missed it. And then you see that the Bulldogs got a penalty right at the end of the game for virtually nothing, that Carrigan hit that was to the midriff of, I think it was Avarillo. So, I mean, if the Bulldogs had scored as a result of that penalty or that territory that they got, Brisbane could have said they were hard done by. But, as you say, there's almost so many crazy moments. I'm not taking away anything from either team. I thought both sides were impressive. I thought it was an absolute arm wrestle. And as you say, we try to be subjective. Yeah, we tipped Brisbane as the best bet. Look, we'll celebrate it. I'm all for celebrating your wins because the losses hurt. But I'm not going to gloat either and say, see, guys, we told you Brisbane way too good. Like, that could have gone either way. Very happy that we're on the right side of an absolute arm wrestle. And as I said before, an absolute thriller. As I go through the comments, anything else to wrap that game before we rewind all the back to a crazy game that opened round two?
We've talked about a few times this year and it will happen throughout the season where we sort of lose on a conversion, but it's nice that Matt Burton missed that in the first half to sort of help us with the mixed matchup. Because as we know, if it finished 12-all, we would have lost. So we sort of snuck one in the back door there. So that was great.
I was actually thinking that as well, that when Bulldogs got to 4, okay, it's still going to take 2 scores to beat us. And then once Brisbane got, obviously at 10-all, I'm thinking a penalty goal, that would be brutal. Once they got to 16-10, all right, it's going to take a Bulldogs try. That clock became our friend. As I said, every game, well, other than one crazy game with 9 first-half tries in round 1, that Eels-Titans game, every game has gone under. If you had an unders multi, 8 out of 8 unders this week after 7 out of 8 unders last week. In fact, that reminds me, why don't we check in and see how the bookies have handled this whole lack of scoring? On one hand, it could be good for the bookies, less anytime try scorers, less favourites covering, all that kind of stuff. But if the punters are catching on, the unders, you hate to say it, but the unders are, kind of easy money. But let's hear how the bookies have handled it. Bear with me as I bring up a little clip from our show sponsor, Tristan from Top Sport.
Hello, Tripod family. Tristan Merlihan here from Top Sport. Another interesting week of NRL. Some really close games again, and a lot of unders action. I think all the games unders at the moment. Doing this just in the back end of the Broncos-Bulldogs game. But some big betting moves. There was a big move on the Tigers Plus when Kalen Ponga obviously withdrew. There's been a massive move on the Broncos. That's our biggest swing of the weekend. They went from 1.5 out to 3.5, and they were back very heavy at the 3.5 in the last hour as well. So that one's in the balance at the moment. We'll see how that one plays out. Obviously got the mixed matchup involved there as well. Our biggest result by a big margin was the Canberra against the Cowboys game, where the Cowboys were a good result. Canberra were very, very well backed, and we got the result there. But the worst result was the Panthers against the Dragons, where Penrith were backed quite heavily through multis head-to-head, but then we laid the plus reasonably late for significant size wages, and then obviously fell in the hole. So it was one of those ugly-looking books. But yeah, so it's been an interesting start of the week. The player performance has been very, very well taken to as well. There's been plenty of punters getting on that. We're still trying to find our feed as to how we price it up, so we'll keep working on that. I know a lot of the members here have had a good crack at that, which is good to see. So enjoy the rest the week ahead. I'm sure there'll be some more games that'll be interesting now from our trading point of view, where we set these totals for next week, because obviously the rules probably do seem to have affected the under, so that's going to be one of the biggest things for us to take away this weekend.
Poor old TopSport. They cannot take a trick. Even when they're in a winning position with the mixed matchup, we still get a win over them. Shout out to TopSport as well, because they commenced their sponsorship of the Titans, and I saw the TopSport banners and stuff, and they've got the TopSport Lounge, I believe, now at Seabus, so that would have been exciting, and the Titans did get a narrow victory as well. One other thing I think we forgot to say about the Broncos game, and I mean, there were so many, but you can't blame Stags too much for dropping the ball, although it was a certain try, without at least acknowledging what an amazing try saver he had on Matty Burton in the first half as well. That was unbelievable. So, again, there were so many moments. And if you were on the Dogs, you are going to be ruining missed opportunities and also thinking that the Broncos got lucky with a couple of their tries. So, again, we'll take it. We'll absolutely take it. But that was a game that could have gone either way as the Undertaker weighs in, and he was on the Dogs. So, that one's going to sting. But as he says there, he's 12-7 so far this season. I commented earlier this morning, with unders have won 95% of the games. The Undertaker should be even better than 12-7. But look, it's not easy to win at that kind of rate. Tipping, we know that really well, so we congratulate him. He's another guy you can follow in our group and, of course, on Dabble. Let's rewind now. We'll go back to where it began in round 2, which was another crazy game, especially the finish. Let me bring it up on the screen. It was the Melbourne Storm home opener defeating the Rabbitohs in Golden Point 15-14. Padonis, how'd you see this one?
Another crazy game. That also was a game where there's huge swings in the game. First half, Melbourne were on top. South, the amount of errors that they made in that game in general, it was almost comical. They had almost a 50% completion rate down in Melbourne, and you can't even get close to Melbourne down there normally with that sort of error rate. And at one stage, it looked like Storm were going to run away with it and end up winning by 20 or 30 points. But they held in there. I thought Latrell Mitchell was pretty dangerous on almost every touch he had, even in the first half there when they were down. And then there were multiple chances, as we said, that they did drop the ball. But I think Melbourne sort of slowed down in the second half. And I sort of said on the Wednesday show that I did lean South, and I sort of thought that their forward pack would get on top as the game progressed and it got deeper into the contest. So from that point of view, I think that South did get on top. And then obviously the huge momentum change was that sin bin for a professional foul when Kenny Bromwich pulls back the South guy running through the ruck there. And then South had 8 minutes to score 2 tries, and Latrell Mitchell misses all 3 conversions. And then another crazy ending where the kickoff, they failed to catch it, goes out for a dropout. And then you would have thought for all your money in the world that would have been a penalty to Melbourne and the game would have been over there. But it bounces and South get it, and then Latrell Mitchell makes up for it and kicks that would have been a 60-yard field goal, the way he hit that. That was unbelievable.
Oh, hit it so sweet. And then from that point, how cruel is it that South's lost? Because with that momentum, you've scored 3 tries, you've kicked a 50-meter field goal to tie the game, and you still have a man advantage. And you go to extra time with all that momentum and more energy and the extra player, and then you spill the ball in your own half. And credit to Puppy as well, because it was a clutch winning field goal because he juked the first defender and then kicked the field goal on the run. So I think that is absolutely brutal for the Rabbitohs. I know they spin it positively, that they showed great heart. When you're down 14-0 to Melbourne and you come back and give yourself a chance to win, that is impressive. But you're off a round 1 loss. We already spoke about on Wednesday how the Rabbitohs have got a murderer's row of opponents. Next week, the Sydney Roosters, no less, week after the Premiers. So it's really tough one for them to take. And as you say, Latrell 0-3 on his kicks. Now, full disclosure, this is our first season doing it, working together full time. And obviously, last year, I come up with best bets on my own. Before that, I had a process with Alex. We're still refining our process, and we're happy to share that and tell you guys kind of how close we were to best bets. And full disclosure, in this game, Rabbitohs would have been a best bet for you. So you liked them catching 8.5. You thought that was too many. I threw my body in front of it. I just felt that milestone game. And in the comments, you dispelled that, actually, that maybe this milestone thing's a bit of a myth, at least when it comes to Bellamy. Maybe with key player milestones, maybe the other guys lift, but maybe Bellamy doesn't want to make it about himself. Anyway, maybe that too much was made of that. I kind of feel a bit vindicated because Storm 14-0 up, you don't want any part of the Rabbitohs. you didn't want the line at that point. And we also very easily could have ended up on a Rabbitohs first half line, which would have lost anyway. And then we'd be even saltier that like we were on the right side, but we lost. Now, talk about momentum swings or key moments. You talk about the sin bin there for sure. But the Olam grounding the grubber in the in-goal. I mean, if Olam gets his hand to that, I really think that's 20-0 Melbourne, and they could win the game by 30 or 40. And it just goes to show how crazy this sport is, that one moment can potentially send a game on a totally different trajectory. Because as I say, like I really think Olam scores, Rabbitohs let go of the rope, lose by 20, 30, maybe 40, honestly. Instead, the Rabbitohs hang in there. They keep the Storm scoreless for the final, 55 minutes. Like the Storm didn't score since like the 25th minute of the game. The Rabbitohs score 3 late tries and nearly could have won and probably should have won. So, yeah, again, there are big swings in these games. So, look, we left a winning best bet on the table, and then I was the one that twisted your arm into Manly the next day. So then I kind of was feeling doubly bad. But, again, we're just trying to – it's obviously like touch and go with some of these plays. One of us likes more than the other. Like then does the one that really likes it, do they talk them into it? And that's just how it goes. And over the season, if we're doing the right thing and we're handicapping well, the results will still play out and show that we know what we're talking about. In a short term, it's very pronounced whether you pick a game that wins or loses. The record could be 80% or 60% or 40%. So look, we will share. And if you watch the show live as opposed to just looking at the best bets graphic, you also get a sense of how confident we are and how strong. For example, Brisbane, we both really like that as a best bet. And I don't even know if we were that right, but we got the chocolates nonetheless. Now, before we jump into Friday, a global point I wanted to ask you about, and there was a comment that came through from John Pierce, and it's just like asking in general, can we actually speculate on why we think this scoring is so low? I mean, a lot of people are saying it's the penalty kick rule. That's because that's the only like significant rule change this year. But I don't necessarily buy into that because I don't think a team getting a penalty that allows them to kick the ball 30 metres upfield, that was designed to penalise the defence more than giving away a repeat set. That's designed to be advantageous to the attacking team. But the scoring is still as low as we've ever seen. So do you have any theory on what's been going on?
I definitely agree with you. I don't think it's the penalty rule because if you ask any team in the comp, they'd all take the kick for touch and start a set on halfway. I think that's pretty obvious. I don't know. I think it's a bit of everything. I think last year's the back end of the season, the way the season ended with a lot of blowout scores and big margins, I think that sort of played into the spreads and the totals at the start of the season. So I do think it'll start to correct itself in the next few weeks because the rule changes are still there. Like we've seen for 2 seasons now, the 6 again rule has increased scoring. So I think as players get fitter, then the good players will still be able to exploit that space against tired opponents. So I do think that the unders will be it won't be a long-standing trend. But other factors why it's hard. Maybe players are energized again being at home and there's a bit more intensity rather than playing in neutral venues that we saw last season towards the end. So there's a bunch of factors, but interested to hear your thoughts also.
Well, yeah, for one, I think new season, everyone's reinvigorated. We have no dead teams. We have no walking dead. We have no teams that, used to always say they can't wait to get to Bali. A bit different in COVID environment, but it's kind of like that. There's no team waiting for the season to end. Everyone keeps fighting, and we've seen teams that are down double digits. There were 3, comebacks. None of the teams that were down double digits won, but they all came back and made it very close. So no one's giving up. Also, I think early in the season, combinations are out. The timing isn't quite there, so the attack's not as crisp as it gets after probably a month. And I do think it's ruck speed. I think that the NRL wanted higher scoring games because it would be more entertaining. So they brought in all these rules to favour the attack last year and the year before. But what they realised was it's not more entertaining when one team just gets dump trucked and loses by 30. And it can actually be more entertaining if it remains a tight contest throughout. So actually, I think the referees are giving less repeat sets and we're getting less huge kind of momentum waves and less snowballing games. And I don't know if I hate it. Like, the bookies are going to adjust, so I agree with you. It's not going to be free money because the bookies are going to have to make their move next. It'll be interesting to see what the totals come out for round 3. But look, I love seeing games that are tight like this one. Some people say, if it's low scoring, it's a crap game. But that Broncos Dogs game that we just watched, I was enthralled the whole way, and you feel like any moment can swing the game. So I don't mind it, and those are some of our reasons why we think it's happening. Let's move on. We'll go a little bit faster because we have deep dived into a few topics already today, but we've still got 6 more games to cover. So let's move to Friday, where, again, we didn't have a best bet on. But it was the Panthers only beating the Dragons 20-16, and that was at Netstrata Jubilee. Any takeaways from this one?
This one was it was another game again where if we got a 9.5, we were close to sort of playing the Panthers, and it's sort of business as usual in the first half when they got to a 3-score lead. I think they sort of took their foot off the gas pedal a little bit in the second half, and they had a few injuries, so they were down to 1 or 2 on the bench there at one stage. And the Dragons, I thought, were pretty gutsy and resilient. Again, another home team. So not really many takeaways. I think Penrith will be happy that they sort of scraped away and got the 2 points in the end there. But yeah, we sort of called on Wednesday that there might be some regression from O'Sullivan, and I thought he had a pretty poor game compared to the one against Manly, and his kicking was poor. So that's probably something to look forward to. Fifth tackle options with the Panthers, includes absence, might still be an issue in the next few weeks. But apart from that, I thought the Dragons, I'm going to upgrade them a little bit on my ratings. They've sort of surprised me so far to start the year.
Yeah, they fought back gallantly because they were down double digits. One thing, again, it's kind of a hindsight thing to say, but like there's all the stories coming out that it was Kiko's 100th. They flew his family over from Fiji, surprised him. So I was watching the game saying, he's going to have a massive game. You just know it. And then the opening try is a kick-out charge down, and then he picks up and scores. And then he got another, didn't he? So he had a double in the first half. So that, I was kind of kick-outing myself because that was predictable. Should have backed him anytime try scorer because you know he was going to rip in for sure. But from that position, the Panthers up double digits. We've seen them smother teams. It's what we've been used to seeing. They've won so many games the last couple of seasons. You're right. Maybe they let their foot off the gas, or again, like without Cleary, it's not quite the same level of, I guess, intensity or ruthlessness about this team. And also credit to the Dragons because they did fight back second half. A guy who is quietly performing quite well is Jack DeBellin. Obviously has had a long time out of the game, but a player that has the caliber of a rep level footy player. And obviously the Dragons could definitely use a couple of them in their pack. So if he's a guy that continues to step up and he's got a bit of ball playing in him as well, that elevates this team too, as much as they've got some young guys in key positions that are going to get better every week. It'll be very interesting to see how they reshuffle the team because a key injury out of that game was McCulloch. So does Hunt play 9? Does Bud Sullivan come into the team? Be interesting to check out on Teamless Tuesday. Let's face the music for our one loss. Luckily, this only cost us one best bet. It didn't cost us the mixed matchup, even though it wasn't a great tip to be relying on for the mixed matchup. But I didn't really see this scoreline coming. This was the Roosters 26, comfortably beating the Seagulls 12. Our best bet was Manly plus half a try. If I can say something for us, that was a pretty good try handicap. I mean, the game was close to pick a maximum plus 1.5 you get on the Seagulls. And we were getting half a try, which is probably even more valuable than 2.5 points. So closing line value, that's for what it's worth, which is not a lot. Other than that, not a great handicap, but maybe I'll begin because, again, I twisted your arm for this one. Mate. I thought straight away the Roosters really surprised me in just how much sharper they were. Like maybe not everybody watched the Roosters play the Knights. Saturday Arvo game, it's not on 9. Like they just heard the score and said, oh, it must have been a strange game. But the Roosters was so bad, especially in attack against the Knights. They had 0 line breaks in round 1. And it was funny because only a few minutes into this game against the Seagulls, the commentary was saying Roosters had 0 line breaks in round 1. And then Sam Walker in that same breath, can't remember who he put through. Was it like Tupanua or Crichton? Or was it for the opening try? And it was way too easy. And it was one of many tries. The Roosters were up like 16-0 at halftime. We had one chance with the Seagulls in the first half where Cherry Evans grubbed it in behind. Yes, it was rolling pretty fast, but it went straight to Turbo, the guy who was untouchable last season, and he spills his lollies. So you're kind of thinking it's not our night when the guy that they rely on to do so much, all he had to do was get 2 hands to the ball. And, at least you got some life if you get back to 16-6. Not to be. Second half, Manly comes out and had all of it, had all the territory, all the ball, got 1 try. Now, I do have a gripe. The Roosters gave away 6 penalties in an 11-minute span, and it wasn't enough for a sin bin. And I feel like maybe there's a sin bin there. It's 16-6. No, sorry, it was 20. It was 20-6 at that point. But you get another try, 20-12, kind of thing, and you've had all the ball. It's at least game on, and it's valuable points for the mixed matchup. So I was a bit disappointed, like how many repeat penalties. Like I want to give a lot of credit to the Roosters because they deserve to win that game, and they definitely won that game thanks to that stout defense during that 20 or 30 minutes where they were under the pump. They only let in one try. And then, of course, what happens? The Roosters come back down the other end, hurt Manly, get to 26-6, game over. Manly luckily gets a breakaway try late that's meaningless for the game and meant everything for the mixed matchup. So got that one wrong, as well as the Roosters surprising me that I couldn't believe how much they turned it around in 6 days. I was so disappointed how bad Manly were. It was just more of the same. It was just under the pump, errors, defense not good enough, not physical enough, no meters from their forward pack, and we thought their pack could lay their foundation. Oh, and one other thing, and again, I don't want to be an excuse maker, it's just an observation. Turbo didn't look 100% either. He kind of looked like he was limping a bit. And when you're on Manly and Turbo doesn't look 100%, you just have no confidence. What did you think of this one?
Yeah, for sure. I think you summed it up pretty well there. This was a game that I didn't catch live. I sort of watched the 30-minute version of Fox Sports the next morning. Similar thoughts to you. I thought it was pretty disappointing for Manly. I would have to downgrade them slightly because anytime we sort of bet on a team that we think they'll outperform the market and they don't, that sort of allows me to sort of critique them more harshly than I would if they played poorly, but we didn't bet on them or we didn't lean towards them. You talked about their we sort of survived the mixed matchup. We only lost the one best bet, but we did go down on our 17-1 multi that we posted on Friday on Ladbrokes there. Manly was the only losing leg on that one, so that was
that's right. Unlucky. So what you had Warriors,
so we had
obviously Broncos was in that.
South Melbourne, either team to win 1-12.
Yep.
And that, as we all know, went to Golden Point, and then we had Penrith to win head-to-head, and then the other two were anchored by our best bet. So that was pretty unlucky, and we'll talk about another multi on the Saturday games, and I think that's a good segue to move into our second best bet of the week, which was the 3 p.m. game, Jacob.
Yeah, that was a crazy one too. And I talk about the good results, and I'm celebrating here, but it would be remiss of me not to talk about the fact that we're 0-5 on multis, didn't win either last week, and get lost the 2 round multis, as you said. We lost 2 multis this week by 1 leg, a 17-1. Look, the losing leg's Manly. You get it wrong, you're not going to win your multi. But we lost an 11-1 yesterday as well, and the only losing leg was the Eels against the Sharks, and they lost on a try and a conversion in the 80th minute. So that does hurt, and obviously multis, the results are volatile. So it's only going to take one hit to kind of get back in the plus. And it's funny, to be completely honest, I don't think we've ever been negatives for multis. I just feel like just out of luck or whatever, every single tripod season, we've won like a 10 or a 15-1 or at least a 7-1 multi in the first either week or second week. And that's just a nice feeling. We've always had that buffer, but that's not reality. You can't expect to just pull out an 8-1 or a 15-1. So look, we can't control the multis hitting. I always say we'll try our best to be on the right sides, and then you always need a bit of luck. We didn't find that luck in the multis, but hey, we certainly were lucky winning the mixed matchup, and even you could argue for a couple of these best bets. The next game we did have a best bet, which you just touched on there, was the Titans, and I'll bring it up on the screen as well. It was the Titans who did defeat the Warriors 20-18. Our best bet was actually Warriors first half plus the 4.5 handicap, and they led the first half 18-16. So you talk about a round where 8 out of 8 matches went under. How this game went under when there were 34 points in the first half, and I'll go a bit further. We had the Warriors handicap plus 4.5. What a start. They kick off to the Titans. They concede a 70-metre try at the third tackle. So it did not feel like it was going to be our day. Did they strike back and get back in the game? No. Next thing, they were down 10-0. They conceded the next try. The Warriors conceded 2 tries in the first half from lofted cutout balls to a winger 30 metres out, and he runs through, and the cover defence can't even tackle him. Once Montoya couldn't tackle Marzu, and the other time Walsh easily gets across to him, but Walsh was no match for him physically. And what even pissed me off even more was that the second Titans try, it's scored by a winger, and they dropped their heads and let him run it all the way under the post. And we nearly could have lost that best bet, although a few things happened in that first half that I want to talk about, but we nearly could have lost that best bet on a conversion. So I was furious, to be honest, when they let that happen. But once again, there was another moment in the first half where the Warriors were building pressure. They had like an equal number of line breaks. They're playing footy, but they just couldn't capitalise. And they got a dropout after they forced a repeat set, and they spilled it first tackle, bringing it back for the dropout, which is exactly what happened last week when we took the Warriors first half. And they were in a 10-0 hole early and spilling dropout returns. So it just felt like it wasn't going to be our day. But to the Warriors' credit, they actually found themselves in front. Do you want to take us through kind of how the final 3 minutes of that first half, when the score was Gold Coast 16, Warriors 6?
That was crazy. So yeah, so you touched on that. They conceded 2 tries in the first half an hour. It was actually, they were down 2 tries in the first 14 minutes. They sort of exposed the edges there, and then even I was in my chair sitting, oh no, here we go again. Another week on the Warriors where they haven't showed up. But I thought Reece Walsh, I think he's taken his game to another level so far, and only the brief time that we have seen him. But the one takeaway for me for him is that he sort of, I don't know, it looks like he's trying a little bit too hard in that side. So I'd like to see him with a bit more composure and just sort of play what's in front of him rather than try to do everything. But you touched on the final 3 minutes there. So the Warriors score in the corner. I'm jumping up and cheering. You're jumping up and cheering. You even posted a live video of you there where Walsh was setting up for the conversion. And then, being the cynics that we are, I thought for sure he was going to miss that conversion. We're going to lose by half a point, but he nails it. And then the Warriors get a repeat set on the back of the kickoff there with only like 50 seconds left. And then it's a crazy scramble play towards the end there. And there's a kick towards the right side of the Warriors wing there. And it looked like the Titans forced it for a goal line dropout, which would have bled the clock out because only like 9 seconds left. But then the bunker sort of wanted to review it as the players were walking off the field.
And not even celebrating a try.
No. And then turns out that sort of slips under his torso. And I can't remember who the Warriors winger was there. But then he sort of, very fortuitously planted the ball down when it was just there for the taking. And then the Warriors end up hitting the lead. And then, you touched on a lot of unders games, and that was a really high-scoring first half, and very similar to the Titans-Eels game last week, where crazy points in the first half, and then we sort of see it all dry up in the second half, and there was only the one try. But and we touched on swings and roundabouts in the season. So last week we spoke about the Titans were a little bit hard done by when there was a bad call where Isaac Liu was penalised for getting his foot in the ruck there at a critical moment. But then we also saw that in the Warriors, where I thought it was a pretty good challenge from Egan there on that non-strip call. I think that was really, really harsh against the Warriors, and that sort of would have taken them right down the Titans' end with 10 minutes left there to try to get a game winner.
Yeah, they went in front, the Warriors. Apparently Holbrook got to the sheds and didn't even know. He said, "Where are my players?" And he got told they're still out in the field because the Warriors scored. He said, "What the hell?" And I was like, this is because I am a pessimist. So the Warriors get that sideline conversion, and you're talking about Walsh, who's an inconsistent kicker, and it's a lefty from the left side. I wasn't even celebrating when the Warriors scored. I was going, oh, this is how this goes. We lose by 6. We've got +5.5. Like, there's no way he's kicking this. No way he's kicking this. And my missus has actually been the one that said to me she should film some live reactions of me, for people to see how animated I get sometimes during games. So I just had this thought, let me just film this video because our bet is going to come down to this. And I was mucking around on my phone, and then I couldn't figure out how to switch camera, and then I just got it on me just as the kick was basically in flight. I've actually got it here just for you guys to relive. Why not?
Get in! Get in! Yes!
So happy. And then, as it turns out, they actually scored again. So technically we didn't need that. But, who knows how things go. I was definitely happy that we got that one. But then you got also mentioned the Warriors blew some chances in the second half. They really should have won that game. They had golden opportunities. I'm talking 2-on-1s. I'm talking outside backs that dropped the ball cold that would have scored. And that's kind of been the story of the Warriors not being able to win close games for the last couple of years. And that hurts. They're 0-2, a game that was absolutely there for the taking. You mentioned Walsh. Obviously the story and the reason a lot of people didn't want to back the Warriors this week or were cautious was because Sean Johnson was out. But I thought that the inclusion of Walsh would be huge. And again, like full disclosure, I kind of had to twist your arm to get on the Warriors again because you've got to be brave to take them, especially after they burned us last week. And you said he's trying to do too much, but I thought I was impressed by how much Walsh wanted to touch the footy. I prefer a player that wants to get in there and have extra touches and help his team as much as he can rather than one that's too passive. So I thought Walsh was huge for them. And I also thought the fact that the bunker didn't overrule that call was BS. I agree. I think the Warriors got screwed there. So that is a tough one to take. Can't take too much away from the Titans. Second week in a row, they kept an opponent scoreless, or not scoreless, but tryless in the second half, which they did to the Eels last week. And again, here to win this one by 2 points. Let's move on. Saturday, another wild finish. And the home team again winning by 2 points, which hurt our multi, but it was the Sharks 18 beating the Eels 16. We didn't have a best bet, but we did lean to the Eels just enough to make them our multi-leg, which hurts, but your takeaways.
Yeah, so the Sharks were physical and tough in that first half there, and I thought they outplayed the Eels. I don't know, the Eels sort of started off a little bit sluggish, and then we needed some energy and some boost heading into halftime, and we got one with a fantastic chip and chase on halfway as a siren was sounding. Brilliant 1-2 between Moses and Gutherson, and then Penasini was in the corner. So I thought that would sort of give them a lift heading into halftime. They came out in the second half. Their forward pack got on top. And I think when they did hit the lead 18-14, they missed a big opportunity to sort of ice the game and end it when there was a Reed Marnie offload to Moses that was ruled forward with about 10 minutes to go. And then I sort of, even though we got a bit lucky with the Sharks missing all those conversions by Hines, I still felt comfortable that the Eels were the right side in the end in that second half. And then we got to talk about absolute brain explosion from Ray Stone. We said it in the comments in the live thread. What was he thinking? Nico Hines, fourth tackle on halfway with 2 minutes to go. He sort of gave up. He stood there. There was two players already holding him, and he comes from behind and chops him below the knee, and instant penalty. I think all the players sort of dropped their heads a little bit. They knew that it was a rush of blood. And then Sharks with a 80th minute try, last play of the game on last tackle, beats Marnie, and second roll goes over there. And then, of course, Hines had to kick that conversion after he missed all the others. But we spoke about rules on the top of the show there. I've got one for you. So the NRL recently said, and this happened two seasons ago now, where they said in the last 5 minutes we'll stop the clock after conversions. But I want to know, and why they haven't done this yet, I think that they should stop the clock immediately when the tries are ruled, because then it would have had 45 seconds left on the clock, and it's more exciting for the finishers of the games. The Eels would have had a chance to sort of kick a short kickoff. I don't know why they let the clock run out when there's still a minute left of gameplay.
It seems inconsistent. You think about the week before when Parramatta won, Moses was taking the piss. He ran like 2 minutes off the clock on a penalty shot. So why don't they stop the clock if you're going to go for goal? It does seem like the stadium clock manager sometimes can almost tweak that to their favour in terms of how liberal they are with letting it run or stopping it really quickly. So I agree. It does feel like a grey area. Look, gritty game. That's how it had to be for the Sharks. They hadn't played at home for 900 days, so I didn't want to bet against them for a best bet because you knew there'd be emotion. There was a lot of the house was packed and there's a lot of boisterous fans there, and they got home kind of on that grit, and they deserved to win because they did score more tries than the Eels, and they lost the game on a very late try. Last week they won it here, but for Parramatta, of course, when a game gets decided in the 80th minute, whoever you were on, it's going to sting. So it does hurt us, especially the fact that was the only losing leg of an 11-1 multi, and especially the fact that Parramatta was up 4 points, and it's their game to lose from that point. And they showed us last year that their defense, is top notch and they can close games out. And again, that cannonball shot by Ray Stone really hurt them because it just allowed the Sharkies a whole fresh set after Parramatta had been so gutsy all day. And unfortunately, they couldn't hold on. It came right down to the final play of that set. But congratulations to the Sharks. As you said, Nico Hines, similar story to Latrell. He missed every conversion, but he got the final one that mattered for the Sharkies. That's a valuable 2 points for them. And Parramatta can hold their heads high. It was a pretty high standard game. It hurts to lose, but not everybody can win every close game. Let's move to Saturday night, maybe a bit of a surprise for some. We did have it in our multi. The Cowboys halftime, full-time. They did win 26-6. So my first thought is a little bit lamenting the fact that we didn't have a best bet on that. Because, in hindsight, wish we had. I guess we didn't know, like, Nick Kotrick had been scratched at the point of Wednesday, which hurt the Raiders a little bit for sure. But overall, I guess I said coming into the game, both these teams played a really tight round one match. Raiders could have easily lost. Cowboys could have easily won. And there would have been a different narrative coming into this one. And people just overreacted to the fact that the Cowboys lost 6-4 in the first game and said they're shit. Look, when a team loses, but they still only concede one try, they're not that bad. Like, as much as people want to bag a team for not scoring many points, if you don't concede many either, then you're going to have a good chance in games. This was an arm wrestle as well. The final score doesn't tell the whole story because it was 8-6, 15 minutes into the second half. Raiders forego the opportunity to actually knot it up at 8-all. They had a penalty, didn't take the 2, which is interesting, but going for it, they turned the ball over. Cowboys score down the other end off a bomb. And then the Cowboys also scored again off a loose ball that was towed through. So, again, a little bit of luck. And there was a sin bin in there. And then the final Cowboys try was also off a bomb. So the Raiders didn't, totally fall apart. They hung in there as long as they could. But all those kind of things went against them at the end. The other big takeaway I had of this was Tamalolo kind of back. He had that look in his eye and he just ran rampant and he led from the front and the rest of the team played off him.
Never doubt the beast. That was one of the things that I sort of said on Wednesday as one of my hesitations for not leaning Cowboys, and I'll take the rap on that one. I'll sort of talk you out of it. I was on the fence whether I was leaning Canberra or not on Wednesday, and then later in the week, as we know, Kotrick was ruled out, as you said. And then when I looked at the weather with the day before, it sort of changed my opinion on the game. I saw 28 degrees at 7:30 p.m. and 74% humidity. I sort of thought that would favour the Cowboys forward pack and sort of become a leveler, because we did sort of see the Raiders having a stronger pack, but that's sort of evening it out. And I thought it did sort of show that the Cowboys were more used to the conditions. There were a lot of errors in that game from both sides. And then, yeah, as you said, I think the sin bin sort of blew the score out a little bit at the end where Hudson Young got pulled back for that grubber interference. It was 8-6 all the way, and it probably would have ended up going to the last few minutes if there wasn't a sin bin in that. But then, of course, Parramatta lose, and then we have a $3.20 halftime full-time that cashes as easy as you like. Always the way.
It seems to always be the way, yeah. And, another thing I took away from this was, like, the Cowboys actually are really fit. They really spoke about how they used the trial, which I think they won their final trial game by 20 or 26-0 over Brisbane. They really used that as, like, round one, and then it got a bit disguised because that Bulldogs result, which, again, the Cowboys weren't terrible, but they were just clunky and the conditions were very tough. And as we saw today, the Bulldogs might be a little bit better than some of us gave them credit, including ourselves. So the Cowboys were actually primed to bet on in round two, in hindsight, and at home and used to the conditions and probably the fitter team. And it showed in the end. And now it makes for an interesting Queensland derby next week when the Cowboys come down and play your Brisbane Broncos at Suncorp. So that'll be one of the 8 games we'll be obviously handicapping on Wednesday. But just before we get out of here, there is one more game we haven't spoken about yet. That took place earlier this afternoon, and it wasn't much of a match. It was a bit more of a mismatch. But the final score was Newcastle 26, defeating West Tigers 4. Any takeaways from this one, Padonis?
Yeah, so I leaned towards the Knights on Wednesday, and if I did sort of take them, if I could get a -6, I probably would have tried to, and then I would have been sort of kicking myself when the news of Ponga was ruled out and the line went from 7.5 to 3.5. So with that as well, the Tigers had every reason to be competitive, every reason to lift. I thought they were pretty lackluster, and it sort of shows that they don't have many playmaking options. They've got very, very few weapons in their outside backs, and I think moving forward, at least in the short term, I won't be looking to bet overs for sure in any of these Tigers games, and people will probably question their character and their ability. But I did still think defensively there's some grit and effort there. Like we saw in the first half, that they had 68% of possession against them. The Knights only scored 2 tries, and they were both off kicks. So I think the Tigers...
And there was a sin binning in the first half as well.
And the sin binning. So I think the Tigers... people will look at the result on the scoreboard and sort of think that they're worse than they actually performed. Offensively, yes, they were bad, but I thought they hung in there, and not really many takeaways. The Knights have started the season well. But yeah, apart from that, any thoughts for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, the Tigers are all right on their effort areas, but if you are that bad in attack, it always bleeds back into your defense because you put yourself under pressure. And also, because if you can't score points, then they're usually being scored against you. And then you're under pressure, then you're chasing a game. And I thought that was quite painful to watch the Tigers. They finally got a try late, but they were pretty awful. And not much excuses, really, because the Knights don't have that firepower to blow you off the park. And no Kalen Ponga today, and no reason why the Tigers couldn't have backed up that Storm performance. But as I said, as I cautioned on the Wednesday preview, maybe that Storm performance was also more to do with how many injuries and many things went against the Storm in that one. And maybe the Tigers, are they the worst team that we've seen so far this season? It's definitely a case to be made. If they're not bottom, they must be close to bottom, that they are definitely big contenders for the wooden spoon, because even we've seen a little bit more life out of the Dogs, we've seen life out of the Cowboys. So it does seem like it's going to be a very long season for Madge and his men as well. And yeah, Peachy, I kind of question that signing too, that sometimes it just looks like he's not trying or not doing too much. And then other times he looked like he's trying to do too much, but everything he touched turned to poo this afternoon. He was the one who got the sin bin, and then he had other errors where they made a line break chance to score, and he tried to do a one-handed pass and flung it 5 meters behind his man, kicked early and kicked it for a 7-tackle set. But I'm not to blame one player. They're a limited squad, and you've got to find some very strong reasons, let's put it that way, if you want to be on the Tigers. But we don't rule out betting on any team. We always look for where the value is, and sometimes these teams that no one wants to touch, are the ones that we actually will be lining up at the window to back, funnily enough. So look, congratulations, mate. 2 weeks in, we had a lot of fun. We're 60% on best bets. That's where we want to be. We're 100% on mixed matchups. That's ahead of schedule. We'll hit a multi at some point if we keep putting in the work, which we will do before Wednesday. And we'll see you guys there. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Thanks to our sponsors, Top Sport and Dabble, which you can join both or either if you like. And the code is Tripod for the pair of them. Enjoy your week. Always punt responsibly. And we'll see you Wednesday. Give us a Lego.
Up the Broncos, Lego.
We're out.